time of decision. The time of decision is around the end of the 20th century, when we will either stand at the grave of civilization in a war of all against all, or turn toward a spiritualized culture. So we live in a very significant time in history, especially in the history of civilization. I don't have to tell you about the cultural upheaval that's going on today. As an example, there's a battle in Waldorf education between materialism, which is a focus on external group circumstances, anti-racism, critical race theory, the setting up of DEI committees, which then start running the school. I mean, it all sounds nice, but it has a very materialistic ideology behind it, which focuses on external group circumstances, versus the spiritualism of Steiner Waldorf education, which focuses on the unfoldment of the individual spirit of the child. I have videos on it if you want to learn more about that. They are really opposite approaches. Like I said, there's an example of the threat to civilization that we face, which lead to a war of all against all, dividing up according to group identities in different kind of groups, puts one group against another. Ultimately, we'll end up in a war of all against all, as everybody is broken into groups looking out for their own interests. They're really opposites of one focusing on group identity versus individual identity, victimhood versus resilience, pessimism versus inspired optimism, censorship versus free speech. One side denounces Rudolf Steiner versus defending Rudolf Steiner. It's not that, things can't change and improve in civilization, but that takes real thought to make sure that you're going in the right direction. Why a philosophy of freedom? Rudolf Steiner saw the issue as real freedom versus the illusion of freedom. When we look at the present epoch and the new trends, we perceive that what is lacking is precisely what the philosophy of freedom seeks to achieve. On a basis of freedom of thought, the philosophy of freedom establishes a science of freedom. For if freedom without the solid foundation of a science of freedom were regarded as real freedom, then in an age when evil is gaining ground, freedom would of necessity lead not to liberty, but to license. Belief in the license, which is unrestrained or excessive freedom. We've been moving in this direction for a long time, where there's a lack of meaning and values in life, where anything goes, and don't dare criticize anybody if they're expressing themselves or living their lifestyle, where you see a lot of lack of discipline, lack of personal responsibility, and the end of merit, where real freedom requires a disciplined mind, personal responsibility, and earned merit. People need to be rewarded for their work. And that's the message in the philosophy of freedom. In part one, it's a study of free thought, how to acquire truth. And it's very supportive of scientific thinking and reason. Part two, the study of ethical individualism on how to express that truth in life. An example of how the philosophy of freedom is the basis of anthroposophy and needs to be the basis of anthroposophy. Rudolf Steiner said that anthroposophy would not work if the philosophy of freedom was not founded on the philosophy of freedom, is that many anthroposophists are being fooled by ideologies, by toxic ideologies that diminish individuality, freedom, free thought, truth, and science. I can assure you that any student of the philosophy of freedom will not be fooled. They will have a strong foundation based on science of the path forward and the development of freedom and why that it is so important. And they will not be fooled. This has been a real failure in anthroposophy, is that they have not taught the philosophy of freedom well enough to give that foundation so that anthroposophy can stand against all these cultural forces that are happening. Why a study group? The purpose of the philosophy of freedom is to lay the foundation of ethical individualism and of a social and political life. Now, often it's said in anthroposophy that in anthroposophy people are not political. Well, it's different in the philosophy of freedom. The book was written to be a foundation for a social and political life. It lays a foundation of ethical individualism very clearly, and out of that ethical individualism, it gives you the ethical framework for a social and political life. Because politics is really based on a person's ethical views. It's an expression of those views. And it's peace based on freedom. Now, the banner on the website, philosophyofreedom.com, is peace based on freedom. Freedom is the only word which has a ring of immediate truth today. If, instead of such slogans as peace founded on justice or peace imposed by force, people would only speak of peace based on freedom, then this word would echo around the world and kindle in the hearts of all a sense of security. Now, the slogans you hear today is no justice, no peace. The social justice movement brings insecurity and authoritarian force to redistribute the wealth and award unearned social positions based on race, color, and other factors. This creates insecurity. As you can see, the great outcry against this movement divides things up into two sides. There's no way that you can have peace. Everybody needs to feel that they have a voice, they can express themselves freely. They're not going to have things forcibly taken from them. People need to feel that they're free. They need to have a feeling of freedom if you're going to have peace. So no matter what you propose for socially or culturally or anything else, it needs to include a sense of freedom for everybody. Now, Steiner even gives a strategy for winning the culture war. He says to expose false claims of injustice, which many people are doing, and that's why it's important to hear all sides, such as equal pay for women. What's the truth of that? Is that true? There's plenty out there. You know, we have an internet today, and a person needs to look at all sides and not stay in their bubble of information, to come to their own conclusions. Show that if you follow the path of social justice, you will not attain what you seek to achieve in life. There's very many characteristics of the social justice movement, such as victimhood and pessimism, resentment, that are going to really stunt you to have a successful life. Now, show that if you follow the path of real freedom, you will attain what you seek to achieve in life and much more, which is freedom born of a free spirit and a firmly disciplined mind. The philosophy of freedom is really about achieving your full potential as a full human being. And it goes into great detail on a path to achieving that potential. And when you're operating at your full potential and you grasp the world around you, life is not that difficult. What is necessary for the present epoch, when freedom must become a reality, can only be found in a firm inner discipline of thinking and genuine scientific thinking. He says freedom must become a reality. Now, everything up above gives evidence of why it must become a reality. We look at the need for security. We're talking about a freedom that really brings you into your full potential and brings your thinking into your full potential and deepens your thinking, which is the kind of people we need to resolve all the issues that come up in a developing civilization. civilizations tend not to last. They go through cycles, they end in decadence, and they collapse. Plus, we have, all the environmental issues and many issues that need to be resolved. So we need free thinkers to, guide us through the issues that we deal with today.